to download both the BarnBurner and Zingo TV apps in the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, also on all smart 2016 forward TVs. Let me turn this on. There. Can you hear me, Aaron?
Beautifully.
Okay, because brain cramp. I called Eduardo because I wanted to make sure that I was hooked up with him, and I forgot to hang up. So I left a message going, "Can you hear me? Can you hear me?" It seems every week.
Wonderful.
Every week I have a technological flaw, being old as I am. So here we go, another week, and I want to talk about the Prime Minister. You know, when it comes to politicians, we know that a very long shadow is cast by Donald Trump, our southern neighbors, right? A very long shadow of what can only be described as crazy stuff, crazy stuff, questionable behavior, questionable comments. And we had a little bit about that here, didn't we?
It appears that we did, yes.
We did?
Well, I wouldn't actually say questionable comments. I would say more questionable actions.
Well, I think we can discuss this. It's about we, the Prime Minister's pet project, and his and his wife's pet project, where they were the only people who were suited to handle, what is it, $900 million in funding for these are high school graduates, college age students, not, the K to 12, the K-12 folks.
Right.
Yet they had no experience in this, and they were talking about how much better suited that they were. Is it me or what? That corruption in politics, I've always heard there was corruption in politics. We've always talked about it. But there is some behavior that raises questions. And is it because the people, first of all, do you agree there's corruption in politics?
As a general rule, I do believe the two go hand in hand. It's strange bedfellows, but you can't have one without the other.
So corruption can, by many definitions, exist, right? I mean, it isn't as simple as taking money out of the cash register, right? Like, what you and I would be accustomed to considering as corruption. You know what I mean? Like, so in this case, it's about people who living in a bubble, and I don't mean the pandemic bubble, okay? Living in the political bubble, they don't hear or see what they're doing. You know how sometimes we say to people, we either say it with our inner voice and sometimes even our outer voice, "Are you hearing yourself?" Is that really what happened here with Trudeau and company? I don't think they were listening to themselves when they decided to do this.
I'm really not sure. I mean, I suppose him ending the We Charity volunteer program, I'm guessing maybe he thought if I end it, maybe it'll go away. I don't know if that was necessarily the case, but didn't we release a statement or something along the lines of the Prime Minister doesn't actually benefit at all from this? It's more aimed at the students.
And there have been the activities at We recently have been questionable at best, raising a lot of red flags. For example, the people around the big table, the majority of them quit or were fired or went their merry way, right? And usually something like that happens when something's, a change is necessary. And there's lots of reasons for change. It's not just corruption. It's success, it's failure, it's, basically the dynamic of the corporate elite in that organization, that kind of thing. So I'm not here to suggest that there's any kind of untoward activity, but we do know that it was an organization in flux, and then it ends up in this position.
I mean, it's the nature of the beast, and organizations designed to help the youth and encourage volunteerism will face their own particular set of challenges. There's no good deed goes unpunished.
Okay,
There's
fair
always going
enough.
to be somebody looking to nail you for something or have their own gotcha moment about the prime minister's pet project because
Oh, it's not about
you know.
gotcha. It's about understanding for me, from where I
Mhm.
sit, as someone who likes to consider himself willing to learn and to understand and to hear what's going on. It, I'm looking at it because it isn't as cut and dried as criminality behavior. It's
Mhm.
there's so much before you reach the level of criminality, right? There's a lot that happens. So I'm not suggesting that, but what I am suggesting, and I think sometimes, and this is one of the diseases of the far left, the problem with the left sometimes is that they make it difficult for people to behave in a manner that's acceptable because they raise the bar to the point of, you see how it goes out of the picture? Do you get what I'm saying?
Oh, I understand that completely. Yeah. Far too often we expect our heroes and our higher ups and our political figures to be angels, and that's really not possible. In the milieu that they've chosen to work, there is no way to be an angel. There is always a little bit of scratch mine, scratch yours.
Right.
It's
Well,
never.
that's politics as it functions on a day-to-day
Mhm.
basis. It's all about deals, right? Many of them in the back room. And that's the whole point. These deals that are made in the back room sometimes are made in a bubble that uh, don't the purity test might, take it down, right? And if it isn't a purity test, it's a second opinion because sometimes, we see this with the Trump administration. We are seeing it more and more, where the people around the president don't want to say certain things because they don't want to get on his bad side, to the point where the people in the administration, like the guy, geez, now I'm sorry I forget his name, but the point is, they asked him, what does he think about Trump's comments that 99% of the incidents of the pandemic, in other words, of the people who have the coronavirus, it's meaningless, it's harmless. 99% of the people who get it, we know that not to be true, and his people will not contradict him now, right?
No,
Has politics always been like that, or is this something we're seeing more and more?
I based on my personal experience in the realm of politics, and I've been involved in a couple of campaigns in municipal politics as you know a volunteer, that sort of thing. It seems today more and more that there is an increase in the number of people who are afraid or unwilling because they're convinced that they're going to get tried in a kangaroo court of public opinion. They're afraid that they're going to be judged on social media and not given the opportunity to adequately defend themselves. Um, whether if you live in fear of something like that happening, then you are going to taint your own legacy. It is going to affect how you make decisions, and it's going to affect everything further down the line. It's you can't be afraid to speak out, is what I'm trying to
And
say.
if you are, because you're afraid of that bar, remember that bar?
Mm-hmm.
Because that bar is so high where you have to, the purity test is so pure that you don't feel you can survive it. So if that's the case, this is something we're just spitballing here, Aaron. So candidates today have to be one of two things: perfect or don't care that they're not.
Yep. I think that's an accurate summation of those basic positions currently. You either have to not care what other people will think so that you can actually get things done, or you have to maintain the illusion of perfection. And a lot of people can't do that.
So is it possible? This is my thinking face. This is my quandary face.
Mm-hmm.
So good people who aren't perfect, who may just try to be the best they could be, but can't handle the extreme criticism, the fire, being in the breach. Does that mean then, spitballing, remember? Does that mean that we're losing a lot of good people that could be great politicians, great leaders in our politics and our society, and help society?
I think it could very well happen. One of the examples actually that I see of this is everybody's calling Trudeau a meritocracy because, and this is the most recent example that I'm trying to work through here. Pierre-Elliott Trudeau appointed, I believe it was Bob Rae's father, as the Canada's ambassador to the UN in residence in New York, and
Right.
now Justin Trudeau has appointed Bob Rae, the Canada's envoy to the United Nations. So look, it's a meritocracy. It's all the same old white people getting the same old positions over and over and over again. But Bob Rae is the best suited to the job, at least as far as I can see. But Bob Rae was a good man who was gone far too soon from provincial politics. Agree with his policies or not, he tried to do the best that he could for Ontario.
Bob Rae was the leader of the NDP and was the premier for what seemed like seconds.
Yeah, here and gone in a flash.
Absolutely, and in fact, it didn't even make it to the news flash part. No, it just there's that thing, and I think he's a good example of what I'm talking about. Is that you really do need to have a thick skin. Like, if you're too in politics, ask yourself, what does it take to be a good politician? It's less now about have political savvy. It's more about having a thick skin and being able to push through an agenda that you probably don't even believe. Do you know what I'm saying?
There's a lot of nose holding when it comes to policy pushing.
It's and you wonder, and the reason that is it because we have so many diametrically opposed opinions, and the majority, are we as divided as they are in the US? I don't think so. Are we divided in Canada? Absolutely. Not like the US. We have our own divisions that, they have their north, south, we have our east, west.
Right. We have that whole Lexit and the Great Divide through the middle of the country, but we're not nearly as fractioned into nearly as many warring factions as they appear to be in the States.
Right. And having said that, and when you have politicians, the politicians of today, and we're seeing them in North America, not just Canada, I'm talking about North America and in the world. We're seeing people who have, like I called it, an agenda. Well, I'll call it something else. You have I forget, somebody was mentioning it. I was listening to somebody talk about politics, and it was a great summation of the way things have gotten. What's your issue? It isn't about making a better place. You have to have this flag issue that rallies your group behind you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Where now, rather than being planks in a platform, because I think we've gotten away from planks. I don't even think people have the ordinary people like you and I. We can't focus on a million planks. You give us something that we're so. We all have attention deficit disorder, it seems, by virtue of the kind of politicians we have. Go ahead.
We've actually come to a situation, and you're right, Frank, where there are no longer planks in the platform. There's just the one plank that each politician is going to cudgel you with until he gets his vote. That's basically what it's come down to. There's no more deck building. There's no more consensus building. There's all I'm going to hit you with my one issue over and over and over again until you vote for me. And I think I'm going to harken back to the West Wing on this one as to how we've grossly oversimplified politics. Martin Sheen's character is debating Barry Bostwick's character. And Barry Bostwick comes out with this trite answer to, well, I think taxes are too high. And, well, that's it. There's your 10-word answer. That's the answer that I've been trying to come up with almost every single question. My staff and I have been trying to do it for weeks. Your taxes are too high? Fine. Here's my answer. Mine are too. Give me your next 10 words. How are you going to fix it? You're going to cut funding for education because, give the money back to the taxpayers because they know how to spend it better? Yeah, sure. I agree with that too. What's your next 10 words? If you can come up with successive building blocks for that one plank, I'll quit.
And that is, the main focus of every conservative party in the world is cutting spending. That's your 10 words. For the socialist parties, whether they're socialists, I know socialism is such a dirty word in North America a little bit, right? Liberal is not even that good a word. You can't even use that word. I don't know what word is good that suggests that everybody should get health care or that we should be caring for our people, that education and jobs matter. When you say stuff like that, it seems a little off the wall. Do you know what I mean? Like how can, like in the US, when they talk about health care for everybody, how can you say that? We don't need health care for everyone because a lot of us have health care, right? And they don't get the way they can get drowned, or they haven't experienced, there's parallels between the pandemic and economics. You don't know how broke you can be by getting sick in the United States until you do get sick and then have to pay the bill. Then you know how important healthcare is. But it's too late because there aren't enough of you to, at least they're trying, they seem to be able to do that. Here in Canada, we're talking about cutting healthcare. When certain parties come in, they talk about, we got to spend less money here. We've got to invest in companies. We got to cut taxes. So when you cut taxes, what are you doing? The government has money that it spends, and if you cut taxes, it's all programs that you're cutting, right?
Oh, that's the problem. You give the government less money to spend, the less money they can spend on important things like policing and fire and emergency health services, education.
And remember we had our interview with the mayor of Mississauga, and she made it very clear. That she expressed us our assumption, or at least my assumption, that at a time like this, when taxes get cut, and when the provincial and federal governments have less money to spend, they basically offload the debt onto her to look for, the mayor of Mississauga, to look for a lot of the functions like the police and like hospitals and stuff like that. Even though it's Ontario, there's the taxable thing that they don't get at the community level, at the municipal level, sorry. So is it possible that this pandemic or this kind of behavior that we're seeing in the United States and to a much lesser degree here in Canada, is it possible we'll end up with politicians that are less about politics and more about community, community planks, making our cities and our country a better place? Can we get there?
I'd like to see a return to that. I'll be honest with you. The old mayoral campaigns in my old neighborhood in Thornhill always used to be more about what could be done for the community. Oh, well, you got votes based on, we're going to do this for the local high school. We're going to do this for the fire station, for example, or there's going to be a new recycling center that we're going to put in that everybody will be able to access. You won't have to pay as much to drop your recyclable goods off, that sort of thing. These days, it's gone more away from that. It doesn't seem to me like it's the same issues that are being debated. I understand that over time, priorities will shift. But it's like we talked about before, you don't know your beat cops anymore. You don't know your politicians anymore. They're further and further divorced from the people as they spend more time trying to raise money to stay in office than they do about worrying about the concerns of the community. That's why it's refreshing to have Bonnie Crombie come on and pledge her support to the Head Injury Foundation that she started. Right? That sort of thing, that's important. That's grassroots, ground level politics that people can get behind because it's something conclusive and concrete that they can see.
And not only that, it probably doesn't smack of kickbacks and that kind of stuff. You know?
Yeah.
I guess the reason I'm talking like this is because it's always in the big picture what's going around, and I like to peel the onion back a little bit, and when I look at what President Trump is doing, and the way he is flogging hate, you know, not flogging it, he's promoting it. He's promoting hate, hate and racism. I mean, I remember when I was growing up a fair bit. I'm a little bit older than you, and I remember McCarthyism and what that was all about. And I remember watching the news and watching, you know, that kind of behavior and how it was so off-putting to many people, but it survived a long time. You know, a year or two in the context of that year or two does not seem like a short time. You know what I'm saying? Seems like a very lot. Like this whole pandemic thing's only been around for about 6 months. Feels like forever, right? March, April, May, June, July, 5 months. It's not even 6 months yet.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it's been around forever, and that it really makes it that much more important. Does it make it that much more an important event because it's so intensified in such a short period of time, and it takes over from, you know, on the news morning, noon, and night?
I guess it all depends to how we adapt and carry forward from here. You know,
Well,
I mean, a lot of this is contingent on our behavior to sort of getting onto the terms of the pandemic as opposed to local politics here. Our behavior will help determine exactly what happens going forward. This, if you want an accurate gauge of this, this reminds me of the shopping cart test. Frank, you've heard of the shopping cart test, right?
Go ahead.
All right. So a lot of people are saying, you know, trust people to mask up. They'll do the right thing. And that's when you ask them, well, have you heard about the shopping cart test? Because the shopping cart test is, will you put a cart back? It doesn't matter if you get a quarterback or not. It doesn't really give you any benefit or anything like that. It's you're doing something else for somebody else. If you can't be arsed to put a shopping cart back, then you can't be trusted to do the right thing for the rest of society, and you should probably not participate in it.
Well, you know what? The real problem with, you know, if you're using your shopping cart analogy, if there's someone in the parking lot yelling, you shouldn't have to put your shopping cart away. You shouldn't have to put your shopping cart away. If there's a little bit of, you know, I really don't want to do it. Oh, he says it's okay not to do it. It might push them over the edge. That's what is wrong, you know, with what's going on in the U.S. right now, and why I'm proud of Canadians and Canadian politicians. For the most part, they're pulling on the rope in the same direction, and you know, there are benefits to doing that. All one has to do is see the way New York State is going. And I like what Cuomo said, I guess it was yesterday or it might have been this morning, when he was referring to the fact that we want to open up New York. And he referred to it as a valve, right? He referred to it as a valve. And I want to add something. He says, if everything's okay, you turn it up a little more. If everything's okay, you turn it up a little more. If everything's okay, do it a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right? Which is great, which makes sense. But here's the other thing. If you do it right, we'll turn it up a little bit more. If you do it right, we'll turn it up a little bit more. If you do it right, that's what I hear. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing that if you put on a mask and if you socially distance, then we'll open it up a little further. Now you're not going, it's like treating society like children. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like saying, if you don't do what I tell you and put on a mask, you're not going into the bar. That's all there is to it.
Heck, you have pudding if you don't eat your meat.
Right. You got to eat your vegetables with your meat. So stop it. And essentially, what we've learned with the pandemic, that's essentially what has to happen is people have to be motivated. Your shopping cart thing, aside, people have to be motivated to do the right thing. There's no doubt about it. And by motivated, They just have to believe they're doing something for a good reason. Because if there isn't somebody yelling from another mountaintop saying, no, 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 you don't have to do that. It's your right not to do it. You know, when you get the mixed messages that are counterproductive, that's why I say our politicians going to change. The next batch of politicians is this kind of political measure that Trump is pushing, whether he gets in or not for a second term, will it survive? Will it continue? Will that kind of behavior continue? Is the question. But if you look at his closest allies, it's quite possible it won't, because a guy like Mitch McConnell, who has basically walked in unison with him, is wearing a mask, is talking about wearing a mask. So there might be a lot of people on his side of the equation that, in deference to him and his position, do not agree with him.
I mean, to take it a one step further, if I could, Frank, the guy in the parking lot saying, oh, no, you don't have to put it away. That's the guy that says, don't worry, you don't have to clean up. That's what we have janitors for. You don't have to worry about taking care of yourself. That's what doctors are for.
Don't flush the toilet. The janitor can do it for you.
Exactly. That's why we have cart boys. You don't have to put it back. Make the cart boys.
You don't have to wear a seatbelt.
Yeah, your brakes work just fine. So does your airbag. You don't need a seatbelt.
Nope, seatbelt's not necessary.
Nope.
Yeah, no, it is something that really does raise a lot of questions. The world is an interesting place, and thanks for sharing the interestingness of this place known as the world. Of course, he's Aaron William Freeland. Thank you for offering your 2 cents as usual.
Thank you for letting me make change on your show, Frank.
Yes, we got a couple more days, and then for you folks at home that are following, if you want to watch us live, you're going to have to wake up a little earlier in the morning. And that also means that I have to wake up a little earlier in the morning. So you people can't whine about it too badly. I'm the guy that's getting up too. You're not doing it alone. So I got to start waking up earlier. No more rolling over.
Can't hit the snooze button as much, but that's okay. We'll live.
Okay, for Aaron William Freeland, this has been Newsflash. Please note this show can also be heard on the BarnBurner Radio Network on its 122 platforms. Please check out barnburner.ca for all the news. BarnBurner, watch it, hear it, read it, and download it. Up next, Sports Wrap with Harley Cook right after this.